Hello, everyone, and welcome to Preemie Chats, a space where we connect, learn, and share stories about the world of prematurity. I'm Leah Whitehead. I'm the proud Preemie mom and former journalist, and I am hosting today from Halifax, Nova Scotia, and I'm honored that you have decided to spend part of your Friday afternoon with us. Preemie Chats is brought to you by the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation. You may also know them as CPBF. It is a parent-led charitable organization dedicated to supporting families, advocating for the needs of premature babies, and providing the latest information and resources to help parents and caregivers navigate their journey. Whether you're a parent, healthcare professional, researcher, or someone interested in learning more about preterm birth, you are in the right place. Together, we are building a supportive community where stories are shared, questions are answered, new evidence is explored, and no one feels alone. Be sure to visit our website. It's there on the screen, canadianpreemies.org. And there you'll find helpful resources, our latest projects, and most importantly, a community of people who want to see our little ones thrive. If you're watching live today, please, I invite you to join the conversation. It's always very interesting to see where people are tuning in from and sharing their experiences as well. If you're watching a recorded session, you can still connect with us through our website. It's through meaningful discussions like the one that we're about to have today, where we advance practice and grow together. So please let us know where you're tuning in from, share your experience, ask your questions, and that's how we create this community. You know, pregnancy is one of the most extraordinary things that the human body can do. It's a time when the body doesn't just sustain life, it also builds it. And behind the scenes, there are incredible changes happening. There's hormonal shifts. There's metabolism that's adapting, the placenta working overtime and around the clock to deliver oxygen and nutrients to the growing baby. In this session, we're going to explore how these amazing physiological changes support fetal growth and what nutrients and foods play a key role in a healthy pregnancy. So whether you're a healthcare professional, a parent, or if you're just curious about the science of pregnancy nutrition, you'll come away with a deeper understanding of how food fuels this remarkable journey. And we're thrilled to be joined today by Dr. Stefania Ronzoni, an associate professor at the University of Toronto and clinical investigator at Mount Sinai Hospital in the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology and Ontario Fetal Centre in Toronto. She is also the co-lead of the Preterm Birth Prevention Program. And she joins us today to share her wisdom on placental transport and nutrition in pregnancy. Welcome, Stefania. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, CBF, for this kind invitation. And yes, I have this responsibility. So if I can have my slides perfect, we are going to just explore today what actually the fetus eats and what is the placental transport and the nutrition in pregnancy. And this talk draws inspiration from this book that you can see on the left that I co-authored 12 years ago before leaving Italy and moving to Canada. And I've been so gifted to work with one of my favorite colleagues that was also my mentor for many years, and a nutritionist that is also Lucilla Tita. This is a great friend. And also this guy that you see here at the bottom, that is Marco Bianchi, which is a biochemist and also a chef, and it's a very, very famous influencer in Italy. On top of this, I spent my first studies during my PhD in fetal nutrition. So I think we can just look at the two aspects of what the mom eats and what the fetus receive and what are the fetal milk. So we're going to just explore different topics. And as Lee explained, what are all the transformations that the maternal body is undergoing since the beginning of the pregnancy, what is the role of placenta and how the baby receive all the nutrients, and then what is the suggested maternal diet, analyzing the 9 essential nutrients that are very important, and we are going to explore why these nutrients are important and where you can find in the diet. So the first things I want to tell you is the importance of a healthy weight gain in pregnancy. And honestly, the goal of this talk is just to promote health. I don't want to blame anybody. And I just want to send you this message to encourage everybody to have healthy habits. And I don't want you to think that any of you, especially I'm talking about parents of preterm birth babies, were anyhow responsible for the premature birth of their child. So just want to start with that. For sure, we know from many different research that the weight before conception, the good nutrition, and the proper weight gain during pregnancy affect positively the pregnancy and the health of the baby and all the baby outcomes. And a little bit of nutrition awareness, even before pregnancy and of course during pregnancy, can help to maintain a good body weight, prevent deficiency of nutrients or vitamins, support a healthy pregnancy and the baby, and build a supporting environment for family well-being. Because I think that sometimes the pregnancy can be just the occasion to eat better and to cook better. And this is not affecting the pregnant persons, but also, of course, all the family members or friends, and of course, the babies after. So there are some rules that we generally discuss with our patient during the pregnancy and even the pre-pregnancy consultation. And there are, of course, different recommended ranges of weight gain during pregnancy that are different, as you can see, based on your pre-pregnancy body mass index. You're probably all familiar to what is the body mass index. It's your weight in kilos divided by your height squared. And so based on which is your body mass index, you have a certain range of freedom of how many kilos or pounds you can gain during pregnancy. And these ranges are calculated based on studies that shows that maintaining this kind of weight gain, this was associated with good outcomes. In generally, translated more in a simple way, we can say that you can gain 8 pounds or 3.5 kilos in the first 20 weeks, and then generally 0.5 kilos or 1 pound per week. And the most important thing is that, and this is unfortunately what probably still old people are telling us when we were pregnant is, oh, you should eat for two. And this is absolutely not true. Pregnancy is about eating for two, yes, but it's about eating twice as mindfully. This is actually the correct message. We don't double our energy requirement during pregnancy. We just need to double our attention to colors, freshness, and balance. We need to take care of ourselves first, even before our baby. Of course, we don't need to be in a diet regimen with low calories. Absolutely not. It's important to have good calories. But what I'm saying is that it's very, very important to try to eat in the best way. And so even small mindful choices in nutrition can make a big difference, and it's also a way to take care of ourselves. So the most important thing is that in pregnancy, even before we are aware of the pregnancy, or even before the belly shows, or we do an ultrasound, our dating ultrasound, and that confirm that we are actually pregnancy, there are so many changes in our body. And these changes are affecting our anatomy, affect our biochemical reactions, and also some adjustment at the physiological level. And this is, of course, all plan towards being prepared to nurture our baby week by week, and also to protect ourselves and to create a supportive environment for the new life that begins. And we need to imagine the pregnancy as a sort of metabolic orchestra, because the pregnancy is actually physiological revolutions. And we have a reprogram of the maternal metabolism. And each system, we are talking about cardiovascular system, respiratory, metabolic system, and endocrine system, adapts to sustain a new life. For example, blood volume increases by nearly 50% in the third trimester, because you can imagine the uterus from a very small organs becomes a large organ that includes placenta and the fetus. And the heart rate accelerates, and the cardiac output, which means how much blood is pumped out of the heart at each cardiac output, increases. And as you look at the energy requirement, at the mid-pregnancy, we have an increase of about only 300 calories. And at the end of the pregnancy, this total amount is about 450 kilocalories per day. So not that much. So we don't need to eat for two. And of course, all these changes are meant to make sure that the placenta receives a constant flow of oxygen and nutrients that are important for our fetus to grow. The hormones are the conductors of this complex orchestra, and this is why these changes are visible since the very beginning of the conceptions, because this is when the hormones start changes, and we know that these adjusting in the metabolism are important to make sure that the energy is stored when needed and released when is required. So we have estrogen and progesterone, that the two main hormones, particularly progesterone, I'm sure you're very familiar with these hormones, help to build nutrients and fat store. This is what happens particularly at the beginning of the pregnancy. And then the placental lactogen and cortisol make sure that we actually have glucose available for the fetus. And together, these hormones coordinate the perfect balance between the maternal needs and the fetal growth. And finally, the rhythm. We have actually two different rhythms in pregnancy. At the very beginning, it's called the storage phase, or anabolic, is when actually the body stores energy for later. And you can see that the fat store grows between week 10 to 30. Insulin sensitivity increases. That means that there is an easier nutrient storage. We are able to accumulate a lot of nutrients in order to make sure that when the fetus will need more in the second part of the pregnancy, we're going to be able to provide exactly all the nutrients. And the second part of the pregnancy is the sharing phase, or catabolic, is when the body uses its reserves to feed the fetus. And in this case, for example, the insulin resistance increases. In this way, there is more glucose available for the fetus that is able to cross the placenta. We have fat stores that are broken down. There were increases at the beginning, and for the energy of moms and parents, and the amino acids that support the placenta and the fetal growth. And of course, the major character of this process is the placenta. And why? Because really the placenta is a fantastic, highly specialized temporary organs that forms only during pregnancy, lasting exactly the time of pregnancy, hopefully 9 months, to connect the mother and the fetus. And you can see, I'm sure that those of you that had kids, they were curious to see at the time of delivery the placenta, but in any case, you can see the two sides of the placenta in these pictures, and you can see on the left the fetal size is where the cord in the center of the placenta originated, and you can see that it's very smooth and shiny because it's covered by the two membranes, the chorion and the amnios. And you can see the umbilical cord in the center with all the vessels that are kind of like creating a sort of arborization up, and they centralize in the cord. And you see that there is a different maternal side that is more spongy and is the part that is attached to our uterus and specifically to the decidua, and is divided in cotyledons and that are attached to our uterus. And the placenta is very important because you don't have to imagine the placenta as a simple filter, but it's actually a organs where many metabolic changes happen. A lot of like transition of substances happens, and there is a lot of energy that is actually consumed by the placenta. And it's actually important not only to feed the baby, but also to eliminate the waste because, as you know, the fetus is not able to eat, to drink, or to breathe on his own. The placenta at birth is about 500 grams, and it's about 1/6 of the baby weight, and it's about 20 centimeter in diameters and 2-3 centimeter in thickness. When you see the placenta in the microscope, and I don't want to do like complex teaching, but it's actually very fascinating, the idea that you have to imagine the placenta as a sort of an inverted forest. And the trees that you can see here on the magnifies on the left, but you can see all these little trees along the placenta, they actually contain the fetal blood vessel and they represent the root. And the trees are immersed in these maternal blood lakes that are called intervillous space, and the nutrients and the gas is where actually these exchanges occurs. So you can see that there is no direct contact between the maternal or the fetal circulation, but there are very, very thin membranes that allow this kind of exchange. And there is a huge exchange because if you think about it at the end of the pregnancy, all these trees are becoming even more arborized in order to create these huge exchange membranes that are, you can imagine a kind of 125 meters square that is a little bit larger than a tennis court. So you can imagine how it's possible that these small organs has such a huge surface of exchange. And the umbilical cord contains 3 vessels, and you can see that all the nutrients are then concentrated in the umbilical cord. And there is one vein that carries oxygen and nutrients to the fetus. And there are 2 arteries that return the non-oxygenated blood to the placenta and all the waste produced by the fetus. So another really fascinating thing is that there is a real fetal milk that is represented by all the substances that the fetus generally eats. And this milk is actually pretty similar across different species. And if you consider that we have, independently by the size of the fetus, the species that we are talking about among mammals, independently by the fact that you have a baby bear or a fetal bear and a human fetus or a bat fetus, the actual composition of the milk is exactly the same. Even if the weight of the fetus at birth represents a different percentage of the maternal weight. So for example, this is the fetus, the baby bear at birth represent only 0.3% of the maternal weight. The fetus is about 7%, and the bat is actually 30%. And the important thing is that the mother's metabolism adapts to provide what the baby requires independently by the species, size, or diet. And the nutrients that reach the fetus are exactly the same. And this is, I think, it's really fascinating. What are the main components of the fetal milks? This is what you can see. I'm sorry that this picture is not exactly the same in my computer, but in any case, the main components are oxygen. That is very important, of course, for all the energy production in the fetal cells. glucose, that is the primary source of energies, amino acid, that are the bricks of our protein. So all the proteins are composed by amino acid, and they're very important to exactly create tissue. And then we have water and electrolytes that are very important to maintain the fluid balance and the circulation. And then vitamins and minerals for enzyme activity, bone formation, and metabolism. Underneath, that is well hidden here, it's fat that are very important for the brain and the nervous tissue. And this is how the different nutrients cross the placenta. I don't want to do a biochemistry lessons, but it's actually important for you to know that, for example, some very, very important substances, like, for example, oxygen and CO2, are crossing a placenta with a simple diffusion. So they're just following a gradient. That means from a high concentration part, they're going to a low concentration part. And this is simple, meaning that it doesn't require energy, and it's a very, very simple transport, because oxygen is very important for the fetus. Very important is the glucose, and the diffusion, it's still from a high concentration to a lower concentration gradient, but it requires some transportation, some transporters, but it doesn't use energy. So because oxygen and glucose are actually the two most important nutrients in the fetus. The amino acid actually requires energy. So to make sure that the good amino acid cross the placenta and they're going against the gradient, so the mom has lower concentration of amino acid compared to the fetus, they need transportation and they need extra energy to be transported from one side to the other side of the placenta. And then there are different other substances, for example, fatty acid, that they're crossing and they are processed by the placenta in a simple bricks in order to reach the fetal circulation. And then there are large molecules that require some sort of vesicle transportation. And this is actually a way to protect fetus. For example, this is why the majority of the medication, they're not passing so efficiently the placenta, and this is sort of protection for the fetus. Okay, so of course, when the placenta functions well and the pregnancy progresses normally, the baby receives all the nutrients and what the actual needs from the maternal circulation. And to make this possible, the pregnant body needs to have well-stocked reserved and a good diet, very different in different nutrients, in order to make sure that we are able to provide everything. And of course, it's important because a diverse diet keeps the right substances available in the blood, so the baby can grow without depleting the parents' own resources. Okay, so the more is you have a variety in your nutrients, the higher is the chance that you're going to be able to provide everything that the fetus needs, but also to maintain your own good status and health. So in the next session, we will review 9 specific nutrients, and this is why the book actually was, the translation was 9 months of pregnancy, and we had, the book was 9 months of recipes, just to be inspired with this 9 month, and it's which nutrients are actually important in our diet in pregnancy, why they're important, and where we can find them. And then, of course, I'm going to let you explore different recipes, habits, and dietary choices. So these are nutrients that are present in whatever diet, independently by the recipes that you're going to choose. The general rules for healthy eating in pregnancy is, remember that how we eat matters as much as what we eat. And also, it's important a good preparation of nutrients and food, because, we need to maintain some sort of safety, make sure that we preserve nutrients in a good way. So one of the secrets is, for example, to cook very simple. So prefer fresh, lightly prepared dishes, avoid overly processed food. It's important to ensure safety, so cook meat properly, fish and eggs, wash very well fruit and vegetables. Make sure that you store them properly because you need to maintain a good temperature, and also make sure that the expiring date is not overdue. Season wisely, try to use not so very choose like dressing, and try to use iodized salt, for example, and then eat regularly. It's very important. It's not good to skip meals in pregnancy or to fast for a long time, just because there is one of the metabolic mechanism is called accelerated starvation, and we have a very fast drop in the glucose immediately after our meal. This is because in reality, glucose increase very fast immediately after a meal to be able to give a good amount of glucose to the fetus, but we pay the price immediately after. We have less reserved. And so it's very important not to skip meals, but also to eat some snack. And so this is like an habit that we should have independently by the pregnancy, and of course, even more important during pregnancy. There are some rules of safety in pregnancy also. I'm sure you heard about some possible viruses or different infection that we can acquire by food, for example, in pregnancy, that can be danger for the fetus. Not so much in North America, but definitely in Europe, toxoplasma, for example, can be a problem, and can be present in undercooked meat, for example, unwashed vegetables or cat litter or soil. So, for example, this is one of the reasons why we should be very careful in cooking properly meat, wash fruit and vegetables properly, wear gloves if, for example, we are gardening, or avoiding just to clean the cat litter if possible, or if we want to do it, use gloves. And the same is for listeria that can be found in unpasteurized dairy, soft cheeses, daily meats, and ready to eat smoked fish, and can even grow in the fridge. So it's actually sometimes very difficult. It's very difficult, actually, of course, to predict the infection. It's very hard sometimes, but we can reduce the risk and eat freshly cooked food, avoid unpasteurized dairy, reheat daily meats or leftover until steaming hot, and then keep the fridge below 4 degrees in order to make sure that we are just going to reduce the possibility of this infection. And these are the 9 essential nutrients that we are going to see in details: water, protein, carbs, fat, folic acid, vitamins, iron, calcium, and fibers. I'm going to start with the water and why the water is important. Well, the water is the most abundant elements of the body, represents 60 to 70% of the total body weight and 80% of our lean mass. Water represents a solvent for all chemical reaction and supports every system like circulatory system, digestive, renal, or thermoregulatory. The total body water increase in pregnancy from about 39 liters at 10 weeks to 46 liters. So it's about 10 liters difference between the beginning and the end of pregnancy. And also because, of course, you can imagine uterus and breast are growing. And also the most important part is to guarantee a placental perfusion. It's calculated that about 1/5 of our circulation goes to the placenta. And then it's actually important because good hydration, it's important to prevent fatigue, constipation, and urinary infection. And this is the recommended intake that you can see that is about 2 to 2.5 liters per day. Where we can find it? Well, of course, the most significant source of water is the drinking water. And independently by you use tap or bottled water, this is not important, provide you can trust your city and you know that is bacteriological pure. and meet the strict chemical and physics standard, you can drink even tap water. But water is also present elsewhere. Of course, it can be very abundant in vegetables, and you can see this is a list of food that has a very high water component: tomatoes, carrots, cucumbers, zucchini, peppers, fennel, asparagus. In fruit, particularly watermelon and melon, and there's very 95%, but also citrus fruit, apples, pears, peaches. And also it can be in the dairy, milk and yogurt, but also in cooked grain and meat. So in pasta, in meat and fish, you can find a water component. Second, nutrients are the proteins, and why they are important. Well, the proteins, as you know, they are building block of life, and it's essential for forming fetal tissue, the placenta, the uterus, and breast. And they're made by amino acids that are these very important substances, also because some of them that are called essential amino acids, our body is not able to produce amino acids, so we need to actually eat amino acid from food. And of course, during pregnancy, the protein needs to increase because they need to support the fetal growth and development, placental and uterine tissue expansion, maternal blood, and milk production. And it's very important because if we are able to maintain a good protein intake, this helps to also maintain fluid balance, immune defense, and cell repair throughout the pregnancy. This is, you can see the recommended intake. It's so in general, out of pregnancy, the recommendation is 1 gram per kilo body weight. And in pregnancy, we need to add the 6 gram per day of protein. So this is about 70 grams per day total, depending, of course, of the weight. And where we can find them. Of course, there are different sources. We have animal sources and plant sources. The animal sources are, of course, meat, poultry, fish, eggs, milk, yogurt, cheese. And these are protein of very high biological value. However, even the plants are actually providing a very, very good amount of protein, particularly legumes, beans, lentils, chickpeas, peas, soy, tofu, whole grain, bread, pasta, rice, spelt, and nuts. Ideally, especially if you're an omnivorous, you should combine half of daily protein, half from the plants and half from animals, mostly because the majority of the protein that derive from the plants, they are rich in fibers and less in fat. And it's always good to combine animal and plants. But if you're vegetarian, it doesn't matter. You can eat plant protein, and you can actually, for example, combine cereals and legume. For example, in this way, you're going to be able to achieve a complete amino acid profile. And also soy products are very good as a substitute of meat if you're vegetarian or even vegan. Carbohydrates, why they are so important? They are the body's main source of energy and are providing glucose, which is, as I told you, the essential fuel for brain, muscle, and for placenta. They support the fetal growth, maintain maternal energy balance, and they prevent fatigue. The adequate intakes help to avoid what I told you, the accelerated starvations, which is the shift to fat metabolism and ketone production when meals are skipped. Because in this case, when we have no glucose, we are just going to produce more ketones, and this is not good. So it's always better to have in your purse or on your table a small snack, to have a snack in between meals. Generally, as you know, it's always preferable to use complex carbohydrates that release slowly glucose, and this is what they can maintain a more steady blood sugar, and they're avoiding the spikes of insulin. The recommended intake is about 50 to 60% of the total body's calories, which is almost, if you consider a diet of 2,000 calories, about 300 grams. And where we can find them? Well, The preferred are complex carbohydrates, so whole grain, pasta, rice, barley, oats, corn, spelt, legumes, beans, lentils, chickpeas or peas, vegetables, and fresh fruit. That includes also carbohydrates. Generally, it's better to limit the simple sugars that are from sweet pastries and sweetened drinks. And it's always better if, based on your taste, to prefer whole grain choices, because we have an increased amount of fibers, vitamin, minerals, and also they're going to just help in the digestion and maintain levels of energy that are more stable. Fat, why they are important? Well, during pregnancy, lipids, triglycerides, and cholesterol levels naturally rise due to the estrogen, especially in the first part of pregnancy, and insulin is resistant. And this is a normal adaptation. This is why there is a weight gain at the beginning of pregnancy, even if our belly is not protruding that much. No? And this is just because we are actually collecting fat. And it's very important. It's just as I said, due to the hormones, and they are in favor of fat storage. In order to have the fat available, not only for the second part of pregnancy, but also for the breastfeeding period. And this is when actually in the second part of pregnancy, there are specific hormones that are helping the fat to mobilize and provide energy, not only for the parents, but also for the fetus. And also, it's very important for fetuses, for the fetal brain and eyes development, particularly DHA and arachidonic acid, and also for the synthesis of hormones and for the cells formation. And it's very important, particularly when we are talking about omega-6, that is the arachidonic acid, or omega-3, that is the DHA, for growth, learning, and vision. These are the recommended intake, as you can see in the left, that is about 25 to 30% of our daily calories, emphasizes the unsaturated fat, so mono and polyunsaturated. We should avoid as much as possible the saturated fat. Where we can find them? Well, we can find them in olive oil, seeds oil like sunflowers or corn. We can find in nuts. We can find in fish, particularly the oily fish, salmon, sardines, mackerel. We should limit saturated fats that are deriving from butter, lard, fatty meat, and of course, this increase cholesterol too much. We should avoid trans fat and fried food. Make sure, especially when you buy products, to check the label with all the ingredients, and you're going to know exactly the amount. And then, very important, as I told you, are omega-3 sources or omega-6 sources, and it can be in fish, flaxseed, walnuts, chia seeds, seeds oil like sunflowers, corn, and soy. And I told you the recommended amount. Then why folic acid is so important? Folic acid is essential for cell division and forming the amino acid and nucleic acid like the DNA. It supports the rapid tissue growth of the uterus, placenta, blood flow volume, and the fetus during pregnancy. It's very important, particularly in the first weeks after conception, for the proper formation of the spinal cord and the nervous system. I'm sure that you're all familiar with the importance of having an external source, especially supplements of folic acid that even precede the conception and the pregnancy, up until particularly the first trimester, and then, of course, for the rest of the pregnancy. And adequate folic acid levels reduce, in fact, neural tube defect like spina bifida by up to 70%. And it's important also for moms because this helps to reduce a specific kind of anemia that is megaloblastic when you have red blood cells that are larger. This is the recommended intake, about 200 microgram per day, and in pregnancy, this is in general nodules, and in pregnancy, this amount is 400 microgram per day, starting before conception. In all the multivitamins, folic acid is in 1 gram in 1 milligram, concentration, and it's more than enough to provide enough folic acid to reduce the risk. It's generally recommended in higher concentration, just if you have a history of spina bifida, and so this is only in some specific condition. Where we can find actually folic acid, aside from the supplementation, which is absolutely recommended, we can also find folic acid in our food. For example, the green leafy vegetables, spinach, lettuce, rocket, chard, endive, broccoli. Legumes, again, beans, lentils, chickpeas, and soy. Whole grain and wheat, germ, yeast, asparagus, beets, cabbage, citrus fruit, nuts, and eggs. And also we need to remember that folic acid is heat sensitive. So for example, if we are like overcook products, we destroy the majority of it. So it's better always, especially if you want to have a source of folic acid from vegetables, to eat them raw or lightly cook and not overcook, because otherwise we are losing the folic acid. And then we can also use, for example, wheat germ, 2 tablespoons daily. It's a very concentrated source, and we can add in the salad or soup, and we can add our amount of folic acid. Okay, vitamins, why they're so important. Of course, they are essential for a proper embryo and fetal development and maintaining maternal health during pregnancy, and also preparing for lactation. There are different vitamins. The fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K are stored in the body, and there are different requirements over the course of the pregnancy. And then there are some other vitamins that are water-soluble, and are the C and B group, especially B6, B12, and folate, that needs a regular dietary intake because they are not stored. So this is why we need to also use supplements. And also during pregnancy, it's important to support the cell division, tissue growth, and placental function. The vitamin, I didn't put you all the recommendation, but they are generally included in the multivitamins that are suggested for pregnancy, and they contain exactly the recommended amount based on, of course, the tables that you can find also online. And where you can find extra source of vitamins, you can find, of course, depending on the vitamins, in different vegetables. For example, you know that vitamin A is present in carrot, pumpkin, liver, eggs, and dairy. Vitamin D, fish, eggs, fortified milk sometimes has an extra vitamin D, sunlight exposure. And vitamin E, vegetable oils, nuts and seeds. K, green leafy vegetables and broccoli. And then the water-soluble are B complex, whole grain, legumes, eggs, lean meat, and dairy. And C, citrus, kiwi, pepper, tomatoes. Make sure that you try to eat as much as possible fresh vegetables, preferable seasonal, because sometimes they are imported and they're frozen or something. And again, be careful with the C and B groups because they are heat and light sensitive. So they need to be eaten mostly raw, all the ingredients, to make sure that you are able to absorb a good amount of vitamins. And then iron and some of the other minerals, why they are so important. Well, iron supports the red blood cell formation and the oxygen transport from the placental to the fetus. And of course, you can imagine also the fact that we increase so much our water in our plasma volume, that means that we actually dilute our red blood cells. And this is the reason why immediately we become in the needs of extra iron, okay? And it's very important. Not only iron, but also iodine is very essential for the thyroid hormones and for the fetal brain development. Don't be worried. Iodine, it can be generally fortified in the salt. Some of the toothpaste, they are enriched in iodine, and you can have an extra source of them. Magnesium and zincs are very important and contribute to cells growth, enzyme activity, and muscle function. And of course, when we have deficiency in iron and mineral, we can actually know that we have anemia, fatigue, cramps, or developmental issues. So all these substances are included in the prenatal vitamins, and there are minerals, so you generally don't need to use extra, but we can use sometimes when we check, especially at the time of the glucose test, and we check our ferritin and iron level, sometimes you need an extra supplementation of iron, and generally this is what the obstetricians are, or the midwives are, or the fetal family doctors are suggesting. Where we can find them? Well, we can find, for example, in the lean red iron in the lean red meat, poultry, fish, egg, yolk, legume, spinach, fortified cereals. And it's important when you have to promote the absorption of iron to combine with vitamin C rich foods, like, for example, orange juice, to improve the absorption. Iodine, we can have iodized salt, seafood, and seaweed in moderation because it's very salty. Magnesium and zinc in whole grain, nuts, seeds, and legume. So it's always important to use, as I said, iodized salt, because this is generally enough to provide a good amount of iodine, especially if you don't live in at the beach with the ocean. Why calcium is so important? Well, calcium is essential for building the baby bones and teeth and maintaining the parent's muscle, nerve, and heart function. During pregnancy, calcium absorption doubles, especially in the third trimester when the fetal bone growth are accelerating, the growth accelerates. The fetus draws calcium directly from the parent's store, and the adequate intake protects maternal bone health as well. And the vitamin D support calcium absorption and should be included in daily prenatal supplement. And the recommended intakes is mostly 1,000 milligrams per day, but it's very similar to what it's recommended calcium intake even out of pregnancy. So if your diet is well balanced and there are calculators, you don't have to add extra. But actually, if you think that your diet is so and so, calcium, some of the multivitamins, they contain calcium, or you can add extra calcium. And of course, where we can find it in dairy, milk, yogurt, cheese, in fortified alternatives, soy, almonds, oat drinks, in plant sources, broccoli, kale, cabbage, almonds, sesame seeds, and legumes, and fish with soft bones, sardines or salmons. Try to avoid consuming calcium supplement or dairy with iron-rich food or tea, coffee, because these reduce the absorption of calcium. And then finally, fibers. Why they're so important? Well, of course, fibers help in the digestion and bowel function that is so compromised in pregnancy, and try to prevent constipation, and that is very common, as I said. It slows the glucose absorption, so keep the blood sugar and energy level more stable, and also contribute to control cholesterol level and overall in the gut health. And it's found only in plant food, and works better when they are paired with adequate hydration. So you need to add more water. The recommended intake is about 28 grams per day in pregnancy, and you can find them in whole grain. So if you can always choose whole grain instead of whole wheat products, it's always better. Oats, barley, brown rice, spelt, whole wheat pasta and bread. Legumes that are our they contain everything, actually: beans, lentils, chickpeas, and peas. Fruit like apples, pears, oranges, berry, and kiwi. Vegetables, nuts, and seed. And it's actually very important for you to include fiber-rich food in every meal and drink a lot of water together. And so I just thought that we are talking about a healthy pregnancy, normal pregnancy, physiological adaptation, but I know that we have some interest in preventing preterm birth if possible. I just want to tell you, just to conclude, a few things about what the research is telling about the relationship between supplements and preterm birth. As you can imagine, many nutrients have been assessed: zinc, vitamin D, calcium, of omega-3. Sometimes the results are very mixed. There is a period that we believe that some substances are actually preventing versus others. But in reality, we don't know exactly, because unfortunately, the majority of the reason for preterm birth the reason for preterm birth and causes are so many that it's very easy to imagine that one single food is not responsible or is not like associated with such a strong protection. And also, of course, these are studies that includes large number of patients with different ethnicity, different habit, different conditions. So it's always different to say, please eat this because this is going to prevent preterm birth. But in any case, what I can tell you nowadays, and seems to be very, very recent, is that it seems that really omega-3 fatty acid, they have the strongest and most consistent evidence to reduce the recurrence of preterm birth. So, of course, it's not that if you don't eat omega-3, you're going to have a preterm birth, or even if you're eating every day omega-3, you're not going to end up having, but you can contribute mildly in reduce the risk. Unfortunately, zinc, vitamin D, and calcium, they didn't have a clear preventive effect in well-nourished population. However, it doesn't mean that you don't have to use them because this is good for your health in general. And so it's important to eat multivitamins, but what I want to say, especially after this chat, it doesn't mean that if you eat multivitamins, if you take multivitamins, you can eat whatever you want. The ideal thing is to combine multivitamins, but also with a good diet. And this is like my conclusion. Of course, a healthy diet is the foundation of lifelong health. This is true for fetuses, for newborn, but also for all reproductive age individuals. It supports fertility, pregnancy, and the next generation of well-being. Nutrition matters before, during, and after pregnancy, and complication, of course, can occur even with the best habits. The goal is not perfection, but awareness and balance to provide the body with what it needs and to enjoy food as care and not control. Start early and together. Good nutrition begin before conception and involve partners, families, and community. And so, bon appetit.
Thank you so much for that presentation. There was so much good information in there, and I was taking notes and trying to take in the slides because, even as you're saying, it's not necessarily just good advice for pregnancy, but for lifestyle.
Yeah.
I'm wondering the challenge that we often faced when I was working in NICU at the IWK in Halifax is that a lot of people can't afford nutritious food during pregnancy. And so for those people who struggle financially, what should they be focusing on, or what tips can you offer?
Yeah, you're right. Unfortunately, this is the big challenge because the economic part is definitely a problem. Well, I think there are like a lot of research about the way the food is offered in the grocery stores, and there are like studies saying you should go at the periphery because all the fresh ingredient and fresh food are distributed at the periphery, and in the center you have preserved food and canned food and cheaper food. I know, I agree that is a challenge and it's a big investment. I would say just if you for example choose seasonal food, these are generally cheaper. That if you want to eat strawberry in the winter or something like this, so you should choose wisely, trying to maybe eat better, more simply, instead of like, of course, complex food, and try to select, even if you have to choose based on your wallet, try to choose simple ingredients and not so many preservatives. Try to cook something, boil vegetables or use your oven and something instead of buy prepared food. And generally, prepared food is actually more expensive than simple ingredients that you can put together in a very simple way.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing I was thinking when you're talking about prenatal vitamins, I know there are a lot of programs out there that offer free prenatal vitamins now. Here, I think in the past probably 10 years, there's been a couple different pharmacies in our area that say just come in and ask for them, and they give them. So it's also good to be aware of what's in the community that can help. But I love that you made the point too about prenatal vitamins don't replace healthy eating, but enhance that. And
Exactly.
so that could help as well, kind of fill in those blanks when things are so pricey out there.
I know, I know. Unfortunately, it's a privilege to eat well. I understand. Yeah, that's true.
Mhm.
But eat simple sometimes is cheaper. So
Yeah.
it's,
I appreciated you talking about the myth of eating for two. And so I'm wondering if there's other misconceptions that you've come across that people make assumptions about when it comes to nutrition and pregnancy.
yes, this is I think it's just an old concept. Our grandmothers, they were telling, "Oh, you're pregnant, you should eat double." And as I told you, it's like the actually energy requirement that increases by
I
300,
couldn't believe that.
it's like a good snack or a couple of snacks. This is what I'm saying. So probably you can just give you a little bit of like pleasure in adding some snacks that you would maybe skip out of pregnancy. But I think I think it was just a lack of knowledge, and you know they were seeing a very like if you gain weight means that you're healthy, but it's not necessarily true. And also, you know, the fetus has a way to be a good parasite. The fetus is taking everything from us. A good nutrition keeps us healthy, but not too much. And sometimes there are so many digestive problems that if you eat a little bit less, it's
Mm.
so much better. It's just also quality of life that you implement.
Reaching into my personal experience in this as well, my oldest daughter was born prematurely. And so I did 12 weeks of bed rest. And so part of my challenge, particularly with weight gain, I mean, I gained well over the recommended amount because my goal was do not move, keep this baby in. Um, and and honestly, I don't remember even how my nutrition was, but for those families who have the preterm babies, and we hear all these things kind of take place in the last trimester, and a lot of us don't have that for our children. And so does the breast milk or the human milk, does that take over that role, or are there things that should be happening when our babies are developing outside the womb?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, thanks God we are like changing our attitude as obstetrician or healthcare provider, and bed rest is now really limited to very, very, very special cases, and we promote at least mild activities, which means not be in bed, move your arms at least, do some mild activity. And actually this was associated by recent studies to actually better outcomes even in patients at risk of preterm birth. So this is actually and also important for the metabolism for our to just make sure. I mean, the fetal milk doesn't change that much. It's just most related to the moms after birth, how difficult it's going to be, of course, to provide care to your baby when you gain so much weight and you have to breastfeed and whatever. Thanks God, the fetal milk, it's technically almost the same, dependently because there are so many good defense for the fetus, dependently by what you eat. But
Mhm,
definitely, of course, if you eat badly, you develop diabetes and you don't control your diabetes properly, and can be affecting the baby. But
mhm.
this is what you eat, and this is true, as I told you, for bears, for bat, and for humans, the fetal milk is pretty the same. So it's actually good from this perspective. I don't know if I answer your question.
Yeah, no, that was great. And I'm going to end with this question because I know that I read your bio before we started, and you're not a dietitian, but
No.
you have a passion about this. So I'm wondering, where has this passion come from for you, and why is this something that you obviously have explored in depth? So where does that come from?
Well, first of all, I'm Italian, so food is our passion since when we were born. So for some reason, you're raised in a different in a way where food is one of the main character of our daily life, right? And also because I spent a lot of time with my friend Lucilla, that is actually the head of a smart food program in Milan, and she does like a lot of prevention for related to cancer and promotion of health. And so, and when, for example, from with I have two kids that were born not premature, but in any case, I try to adapt as much as possible a healthy diet for us, but also for them, since at the beginning of their life, trying to select good food, good label. And I do believe that we need to contribute to our health in somehow. Of course, unfortunately, bad condition may happen, complication may happen, even in healthy people. And this is undoubtedly, and it would be so easy to counterbalance bad condition just with food and diet. Unfortunately, we are not so much powerful, but definitely I do believe. And my passion is because I like cooking as well. I like preparing healthy food for my friends, for my family. And so this is why probably I'm so passionate about this. And probably also because I know all these placental transportation mechanism, how the fetus receive the nutrients, that I became passionate in maternal nutrition as well. No, absolutely, I'm not a nutritionist, and whatever nutritional suggestion that I gave you comes from my nutritional friends, not from me.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation today. And really, I mean, your passion is of benefit to us, because I learned, and I'm sure our viewing audience learned today as well, just, those reminders that are helpful of the diversity and the making even small choices that can help the outcomes of our little ones. So thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you, Lee, and thank you, everybody.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us here today for this edition of Preemie Chats. A special thank you to Sanofi for their support of educational programs such as this one. And if you missed a part of today's session, or you want to rewatch any of it, there was a lot of information you can revisit and take notes, then you can find this episode and all of our past episodes on our YouTube channel and website, canadianpreemies.org. And while you're there, explore the many free resources and support options we offer to help families on their journey. As a charitable organization, CPBF relies on the generous support of people like you. Your donations allow us to continue empowering families of premature babies every step of the way. And together, we can create a brighter future for all preemies and their families. Now, if you tune in every week, you know that this is the time that I talk about the upcoming gala. I can't believe it is next week, November 6th, and I encourage people to attend. Well, now I'm thrilled to share that that event is officially sold out. So that is great news for CPBF. And if you didn't grab your ticket and you're feeling a little FOMO, don't. There are still ways you can join in the celebration. You can contribute to our Little Lights wall that's dedicating your donation in honor of a preemie who holds a special place in your heart. So visit CanadianPreemies.org for more details on that opportunity. Thank you for being a part of this community and for being a part of our episode today. We will see you next Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for another live episode of